What's up guys, VitalSyntax here, and this is going to be my review of the SteelSeries Rival optical gaming mouse. I'm currently in the search for the perfect FPS gaming mouse, and I went to Amazon and picked up 3 different mice. We've got the SteelSeries Rival, which will be the review focus in this video. We've also got the Razer DeathAdder 2013 edition, which I'll be doing a review on in the next couple of days. And then finally we have the Logitech G400S, which is also an optical gaming mouse. These are all 3 optical mice, and I'll talk more about optical sensors throughout this video, but then I'll be doing a review later on, and then finally I'll do a review of all 3 of these mice, comparing and contrasting and giving you guys my ultimate opinion on which one is my favorite. Alright, so let's put these 2 aside for now, because we're just going to ignore those. But this video is going to be all about the SteelSeries Rival. And I'm going to go very detailed into my personal experience with the mouse. I've had it for about 3, 4, 5 days. I think it was about 4 days now. And I've been using it throughout those 4 days as my daily driver for gaming, for basically anything I'm doing on my home PC. So I don't have a extended experience with it. I won't be able to give you a good idea of build quality over a long period of time, over 6 months to a year. I don't know if this mouse will wear out or have longevity issues, but what I can give you is my initial impressions, and hopefully later down the line in 6 months to a year, whichever one of these 3 mice I end up keeping, I'll be able to give you guys a long-term kind of review. Now, the reason that all 3 of these mice were optical gaming mice, and I'm kind of avoiding laser mice, is in my experience, optical gaming mice are superior in a couple of ways. Laser mice can go up to higher DPI or CPI, meaning that you can have higher sensitivity enabled. So if you're a high DPI gamer, you really need super duper high DPI, then a laser might be a good option. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, people aren't going to be using over 3000 DPI. And if you are, then you probably shouldn't be. I personally play at 500 DPI. If you want Battlefield specific sensitivity, I use a 6 in Windows and I use a 20 in Battlefield settings. So fairly low DPI all around, but not crazy low. There's definitely people that have a lot lower DPI. Now I also play on a hard surface, so that's also something you need to consider when you're purchasing a mouse. I play on the Corsair, I guess you guys can't see it, but it's the Corsair MM400. It's a hard plastic mouse pad, and I might do a review on this separately. Extremely awesome mouse pad. It's the best hard mouse pad I've used that doesn't have any durability issues. It's held up extremely well, but I'll talk more about that in a separate review of this mouse pad. So let's talk about this mouse. Let's talk about the feature set, and then we'll get into kind of the hardware, how it feels, some of the build quality issues, if there are any, and also talk about just kind of the surface texture and how it feels in the hand and a couple of those things. So other than being an optical gaming sensor, it's also extremely long mouse. In comparison to those other 2 mice, it is the longest out of the 3, and it's more on the length size of something like a IntelliMouse 3.0 from Microsoft. So this is actually the longest mouse that I've used in the sense of this type of length. Girth wise, it's pretty wide as well. It has a pretty wide stance, and it's also fairly tall. When you look at it from the top down, it doesn't look like a very tall mouse. It kind of looks like a sleek, low-profile mouse. But if I hold it up on the side here, you guys can actually see it's a fairly chunky mouse. It's definitely for somebody with medium to larger hands. If you have a smaller hand, it's not going to be the best option for you. It also depends on your grip, which I'll get more into it in a second. On the bottom here, you guys can see the optical sensor. Now, really the biggest difference between an optical and a laser sensor is an optical is actually using an LED or some type of light emitting source or optical source to track the movement of the mouse, whereas a laser sensor uses a laser to do the exact same thing. Now, it's kind of a personal preference thing, but if you look at, let's say, the top 10 gamers that you watch, as far as that are actually good at something, so top 10 Battlefield players, top 10 Counter-Strike players, top 10 something like that, where it's a first-person shooter that requires a lot of accuracy. When you're talking about Dota, you're talking about other types of games like Civ 5 or something where you need a high sensitivity to move across your screen really quickly and not worried about a ton of accuracy, then another type of mouse might be a good option. But when you're worried about first-person shooters where accuracy is king, almost everybody that I know uses an optical gaming sensor. And in my experience, with the limited number of mice I've used, which include obviously these 3 mice, as well as the Death Adder 3.5G, which I've been using for 2 years, the Logitech G500S, which is a laser mouse, is all very similar to the Logitech 400S. It's essentially the same mouse, just with a laser. And then I've also used the Logitech G9X, which is another laser mouse. I've used the Meowtix Naos 5000, which is another laser mouse. Those mice are great mice. They just aren't quite as good when it comes to tracking, when it comes to accuracy, when it comes to speed and input latency as the optical mice I've used. Now, all 3 of these optical mice, including the 3.5G Death Adder, which isn't going to be part of this video or any of the other videos I'm doing because it's a very old mouse, all feel about the exact same. They all feel just as accurate as each other. They all have very little to no hardware positive or negative acceleration. They all have the ability to turn off or don't have it enabled by default with angle snapping or increased precision, which essentially tries to straighten out movement. So if you're trying to move in a straight line, it'll actually not track exactly your movement, but it'll try to predict where you're going, which is something that's really annoying for first-person shooters. It might be great if you're drawing a straight line, but for a first-person shooter, you need one-to-one movement of what you're moving on your mouse is what happens on your screen. And optical mice, in my experience with the limited mice that I've used, are superior in that sense. I could be wrong. It could just be a placebo effect, but I personally would not buy a laser mouse, and so I can't really recommend buying laser mice. Anyway, it's obviously not a huge issue because tons of people use laser mice, so don't just take my word for it. Go out there and do a little research on it about yourself. But enough about sensors. Let's talk about the mouse itself, some of the hardware features. So let's start over here on the left side. You have this rubberized texture. It's a very coarse texture, has very large ridges to it. It's also on this left side, and it gives a really good grip. It's not slippery at all. It's very tactile, and it gives you a lot of control over the mouse. Very easy to lift the mouse off of the mouse pad because you have so much grip on the sides, which is definitely a really nice feature of this mouse. I don't know how long those will kind of last. They might get grimy over time or need to be replaced or just kind of get worn out, and those little ridges might go away. But regardless, also on the left side, you've got these 2 thumb buttons, fairly large, and I like the placement of them. Give you a little audio cue of what they sound like. Very satisfying clicks. It kind of has a deep press. You can see I'm having to push the key fairly deep into the mouse to click it. I don't necessarily mind it. It's just a little bit different than something like the Death Adder, which has a very short click. It's kind of a louder click as well. Not necessarily something that's worse or better about the mouse. It's just something that's a little different. But I do like these buttons. They feel solid. They feel tactile, and they're very clicky, which is great. They don't feel mushy at all. All right, moving on to the top, you have your left and right click buttons. I'll give you an audio cue of those as well. Now these are actually, I believe, switches that were built by SteelSeries, which typically you have, switches and the sensor built by a different company. But the switches in here are supposed to be lasted for like 20-something million clicks, which is insane. So build quality wise, I wouldn't worry about those clicks. They feel satisfying. They feel tactile. They do feel like they have a little bit longer of a distance to actually click than, once again, the Death Adder, which has a very, very short click distance. And kind of a more audible click. I don't really care personally. They feel just as good. Scroll wheel wise, give you a little audio cue of that as well. It's kind of a noisy scroll wheel, and if I shake the mouse a little bit, sometimes you can hear it. There's a little bit of a rattling, and I've heard it's because of the scroll wheel. I actually like the scroll wheel a lot. It's a little smooth. It's a little bit more smooth than the Death Adder scroll wheel. So the Death Adder is a little more of a tighter scroll. And if you're curious, the scroll wheel on this thing is just absolute crap, the G400S. This is like a scroll wheel off of a $2 Dell mouse. But scroll wheel on here I actually really like. It's a smooth scroll, but it does give you that click, that tactile click. It also has a really nice lighting effect on it, which isn't a huge importance. It has a nice LED on either side. You also got the LED over here. I have it set to red. It looks kind of pinkish in this video, but you can set that to really any color you want. Green, blue, yellow, red, pink, purple, does not matter, which is actually a really cool feature. As far as the surface texture of the mouse, I don't know if you guys will be able to see it. I don't think my camera has that good of a macro, but it's a rubberized kind of grip to it that works really well. So overall, the scroll wheel, the clicks, the mouse buttons are all very satisfactory. You also have this extra button right here that is default to toggle between your DPI settings in the software, but you can essentially bind that to whatever you want. And then also back here, you've got that logo, and then also on the back, you got this little Rival. I know my camera's so crappy that you can't read it, but it does say Rival back here, and you can actually swap that out for another one that says SteelSeries. On the left side, pretty basic stuff, or on the right side, pretty basic stuff. You just got the rubberized grip. That's about it. On the bottom, you've got 4 fairly small mouse feet, which I actually prefer. Something like the Logitech G400S has very large feet, which I think gives a little bit more resistance when you're moving around on your surface. I prefer like the Death Adder has, or like this mouse has, where it has smaller feet in each corner, which gives you a lot of glide. And they're also rounded feet. You can see they're not like a flat surface. They're kind of like a bubble, a round surface. So you get even less friction. So it's just a very smooth sliding mouse. And that's why, once again, why I love this Corsair MM400 is it's just so freaking smooth. It allows me to make really quick twitch movements, which is awesome. Other than that, on the bottom, you've got their logo, some info here, and then the optical sensor, which you can actually see a little bit. It's got a white light coming out of it. I can't see that light with my own eyes, so when I lift the mouse off, I don't see like a light shining on my desk, kind of like you see this red laser coming out of the G400S. I can see that, and you'll be able to see that if you buy the mouse, but the light on this one, I guess they use a non-visible light, so you can't actually see that unless you're looking through a camera like you guys are right now through YouTube. But the surface material on the top is a very important aspect of any mouse, because it's going to get grimy, it's going to get sweaty, you're going to have your hand all over it, whether your hands are clean or not. This one implements a smooth, soft touch surface. It's very similar to a lot of other soft touch surfaces, just same as this keyboard over here. This is the what is this? The Cooler Master CM Storm Ninja, which is a Cherry MX brown keyboard. Might have to do a review on that as well. Oh, sorry, I moved my camera a bit. But it has that smooth touch surface on it. So it's a very smooth surface. It does pick up a little bit of fingerprints. You can see it's not a perfectly even texture here. It's kind of got some fingerprints and a little bit of a little bit of grime on it. It's not fingerprint resistant. It's not sweat resistant, but it does a pretty good job of staying clean. It's really easy to clean off. So if you're worried about having your mouse look flawless, brand new, you might not want to go with this one. Something like the G400S, it has a hydrophobic surface on it. This thing looks immaculate every way you look at it, even in light, even though my hands have been, all over this thing. So same with the Death Adder. The Death Adder has more of a coarse kind of sandpapery finish to it. This is a very soft, smooth surface. I don't really know which one I like more. This one to me is very, very comfortable, and I don't mind it not looking perfectly, even. There's some fingerprints and a couple other things over the surface of it. So right there, you can see a little blemish. Honestly, the surface texture is fine to me. It's not the best option, and I'll get more into that in the comparison of these three mice, but just so you guys know, this is a soft touch finish. As far as the cable, I missed this is a rubber cable, so it's not braided, it's rubber, which is a very stark contrast to something like the Death Adder, which employs a braided cable, and the G400S, which employs kind of a plastic cable. So they're all three just completely different when it comes to the cable. I personally don't mind the rubber cable. It does give a little bit more drag on your surface because it seems to grip to your desk or your mouse pad surface a little bit more, because it's kind of a rubbery, grippy surface, but not anything that's really noticeable. I would prefer to have a plastic cable, or even better, a braided cable, but the rubber cable here just does totally fine. I don't really worry about it, having any issues. It feels pretty thick. Feels pretty high quality, but it is rubber versus the other two mice, which employ a plastic and a braided cable. So now let's talk about the actual impressions, the performance, the grip. One of the most important things between these three mouse, or any mouse, is it really comes down to two things. The most important thing to me is the optical performance, or the sensor performance. You have to have a flawless sensor. It has to have no acceleration. It has to have no angle snapping, no prediction. It has to be very one-to-one with your movements. And then the number two most important feature of a mouse is comfort. How does it fit into your hand? If you can meet those two standards, for me, you can find the best mouse for you. This mouse is not the best mouse in every aspect, but it may be the best mouse for you because of those two key things. It has, in my opinion, a flawless sensor, as well as those other two mice. They all three have flawless sensors in my eyes. And number two, it's extremely comfortable for certain types of people. Those certain types of people are palm grippers. So let me pull my sleeve real fast here. There's three main types of grips when it comes to mice. You have palm grip, you have claw grip, and you have fingertip grip. You can have some type of hybrid of the three, whatever you want to call it, but those are the three primary types of grips. So a palm grip is essentially where your palm rests on the surface of the mouse, and then your fingers are all the way extended across the mouse. You do not have your palm rested on the actual mouse pad. So that is a palm grip right there. Now a fingertip grip is where you use your fingertips to hold onto the mouse. You do not have your wrist or your palm anchored onto the mouse. You instead have your palm anchored onto the surface of the mouse pad. So you're basically limited to where your palm's anchored. You're going to have to lift your palm up to move it. Whereas with a palm grip, you can move your entire arm versus kind of just your hand, if that makes any sense. And then the last type of grip is a fingertip or a claw grip, which is essentially a palm grip, but you do this. Or it could be a fingertip grip that does that. Basically, you just make your hand like a claw and then just somehow put your hand on your mouse. What I use is a mix, and I don't mean a mix like I do both at the same time, but I switch between the two of a palm grip, which is what I prefer, and a fingertip grip. The reason I do that is because in the past I've been using the Razer Death Adder 3.5G, which is essentially the predecessor to the the Death Adder 2013, which is right here. And it just doesn't work with a palm grip. And I'll get more into that in the review, but this mouse does not work with a palm grip for large or medium-sized hands, in my opinion. This is a fingertip or a claw grip. Whereas this mouse works great for anything, and it works best for a palm grip. You can still fingertip it, you can still claw it if you want, but a palm grip is really where it comes in and where it fits really well. It fits like a glove. And same goes for the G400S. I'll talk more about that in its review. But as far as the comfort of this mouse, it is extremely comfortable. I find myself palming it and then having these two fingers grip onto the side mesh. My thumb rests on this side mesh, and I get a good grip for the mouse. I can lift it up really easily and just have my entire inside of my palm is just holding onto the mouse. Essentially, my hand just meets it like that, and I wrap it around. And that's so much more comfortable than a fingertip or a claw grip for me. I get hand cramps all the time because I'm using a mouse at work every day, and I use a mouse every day when I game. And that means that I get some type of carpal tunnel issues and things like that if I hold the mouse in a way that's kind of crampy. You know, when you see people doing like something like this, they're like holding onto the mouse in an awkward position. But when you have your entire hand encompassed by the mouse, which works really well with both of this and the G400S, is so much more comfortable. And for a long period of time, whether that's at work or gaming, it doesn't give me cramps, and it makes it more comfortable. So that's one of the biggest advantages to this mouse over these other two. Well, I guess the G400S is also fairly comfortable when it comes to this type of area, but over the Death Adder, this thing is so much more comfortable for me. And it's one of the main reasons why you'll see in my review, I end up not really, being too much of a fan of the Death Adder, even though I've been using one for 2.5 years. I used the 3.5G for 2.5 years. I bought the 2013 thinking, oh, I'll just get a replacement for this because this mouse has been so awesome. But, I was at the same time, oh, maybe I should try out these other mice. And I'm glad I did because this thing is really awesome. And so is the G400S. So as far as performance goes, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit, but performance in game is extremely good. I'll show you guys some in-game gameplay of me playing some stuff with this mouse. I'm not trying to show off skills or anything, and you probably won't be able to tell a difference between this and when I show you gameplay with the other mice because it's kind of hard to tell, but it's just a really good mouse. It might be interesting to do in my comparison of the 3 mice, show me actually using the mice with this this webcam, and then I'll overlay my gameplay of it so you guys can see my movement, because I play on a fairly low DPI. I use my entire mouse pad, which isn't a massive mouse pad. It's a large mouse pad, but it's not extremely large. But overall, my review and impressions of this mouse, keep in mind I've only had it for under a week, about 4 days, are extremely positive. Extremely positive. It has the 2 most important things that matter to me in a mouse. Number 1 is the performance of the sensor is flawless, and number 2 is the comfort is extremely nice. It does have some downsides. I would prefer a different soft touch surface. I would prefer something like the hydrophobic that you have on the G400S. I would prefer a cable that's either braided or plastic. Preferably a braided cable would be best. And I'd also prefer a slightly lighter mouse. It's not a heavy mouse by any means, but it is like 10 grams heavier than the other 2 mice. I think it's about around 120, 130 grams, whereas the Death Adder is around 100 to 110 grams. So it is a slightly heavier mouse. But overall, guys, this mouse is killer. And spoiler alert, this is probably the mouse I'm going to go with once I compare the 3 mice. So if you stick around to the end of the video, then you kind of got a sneak peek of the other 2 mices, but I'll do a video on those separately. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see differently done about this video. I know it's a fairly long video, but that was my hope, to go in depth with the actual mouse, because a lot of people just do an unboxing. You don't get to see anything. They just tell you what you could have found out by going online. I wanted to give you guys, detailed information about the mouse that you couldn't get anywhere else. But if you guys have suggestions for the other mice when I do the review of those, if you guys want them shorter, if you guys want me to go into specifics of things I didn't cover in this video, then let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know if you guys are interested in more videos like this, because I could do reviews of, mouse pads, keyboards, monitors. I've got a couple other things that I'd like to talk about hardware wise. I'm a hardware enthusiast, and I love that type of stuff, but I just don't know if my audience is there as far as my YouTube channel goes. But feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.